Thank you for joining us today. We are the 55th Wing Staff Agency Superintendents, and we're going to be discussing today what role we play in honoring the August 26th is the 100th anniversary of the Women's Equality Day. After introduction, we're going to discuss what role we play in supporting Women's Equality Day. I'm Senior Master Sergeant Kathy Blake. I'm the Wing Staff Agency and Comptroller Squadron Superintendent. And to my right,
I'm Senior Master Sergeant Renee Ochoa. I'm the Superintendent of the 55th Wing Command Staff.
I am Senior Master Sergeant Romero, and I am the Superintendent of Wing Safety.
Hi, I'm Senior Master Sergeant Laura Garcia, and I'm the Superintendent for the Inspector General.
Today we're going to have a discussion, open dialogue on how we as superintendents play a role in supporting the Women's Equality Day that we're going to celebrate 26 August. And I'm going to start off the discussion in how I feel I play a huge role and a very important role as a mother. At home, I open dialogue with my kids on women's role and men's role and how we should be equal partners. We have open discussion because the more discussions that you have, the more comfortable it becomes. And I want to make sure that my children pass on in their generation to support Women's Equality Day. To my right is Senior Ochoa. What role, as a man, what role do you feel that you play in supporting Women's Equality Day?
As a man, it's up to us, as men, it's up to us to recognize and admit that there are still several institutions and systems that have an inherent bias towards men, whether that be military, political, government, higher business. And armed with that, I have to continue in my life recognizant knowing that there are these biases, and am I conducting myself in a way to further women's equality? Am I somehow unconsciously inhibiting or prohibiting women from reaching their full potential? Based on a bias that I may not even know that I have, something that's been ingrained culturally in me, perhaps. Yeah, and as a husband and as a father of a 11-year-old girl, I have to sometimes think, okay, am I somehow limiting her based on these gender roles that may not apply to her generation? Something from my generation may not mean that much in hers or in her children's generation. So my role as a man is to admit that there are biases against you in my favor and to just help and support in any way that I can to overcome those.
Very good, thank you. Senior Romero.
Yeah, I totally agree. At home I have a 13-year-old son and I have a 12-year-old daughter. And I want to make sure that I'm not putting a ceiling on how she can achieve whatever goals she wants to. And the same is true for the outside, influences. If anybody were to tell her that she couldn't do something because she's a female, then I want her to be strong in her values, in her upbringing, to say, I'll show you, or yes, I can. Because all of us, the strength and the unity between male and female is only going to further along the unity of our nation. So it's important because each one of us brings something to the table. And if we focus more on what those skills are instead of our gender, yeah, we can do anything.
So, and I think you both said it right? I have 3 daughters at home, and there is, no is not in our vocabulary. I have one of them that wants to be the President of the United States, and absolutely, because of women's equality, yeah, you can be President of the United States, and not only that, you're gonna get to vote for who you want for president. And we do, this being a presidential election year and everything, I talk to my girls about, what it means to vote. It's the right to vote, not just, and to practice that right and have your voice be heard, right? And then the other thing too is, as senior enlisted members, females, we've broken through some of the barriers that others had before us. And I think not just my kids at home, but our airmen, helping them realize that they can reach their potential, whatever they want to achieve, and showing them that the path is pretty much laid out before them, and because we've come along and helped build that path for them. And I think that's what's really important to me, is just being that example for both my daughters and then the airmen around us. So
I think, you brought up election. And so as we talk about Women's Equality Day, that's where it all started. I mean, that's why we celebrate to this day, is because, that's when women were allowed to vote. That point was only, it was only the beginning, and it was so incredibly hard during that time frame for those women to stand up in adversity as completely and total minorities at that time. So their struggle, and then seeing how far we've come, and just, getting ready for us as senior NCOs, as airmen, to see that movement completely transpire here in the upcoming months, when Chief Wright ends up, exiting, and then we welcome Chief Bass. So it's just exciting times to see that go full circle.
Does anyone have anything else to add? Senior Ochoa?
My first chief, when I was a very young A1C Ochoa, she joined the Women's Air Force program. She joined a segregated Air Force. And even though she's long now retired, her airman is now a senior NCO himself, and is now seeing the first female Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. Wow. And who knows what the next generation is going to uncover. I mean, because it's 100 years since women could vote, but I'm sure that it was also several years after that until it was culturally acceptable to vote. Just because it was legal doesn't mean that it was accepted by men for our wives and our mothers to go vote. And ever since one of the presidents, ever since he did allow women to serve full-time in the regular Air Force, even though women could command, was it culturally acceptable for a woman to command? And now, at least in our service, we've seen the first female 4-star general of the Air Force, 4-star combatant commander. That has now become the norm that maybe my chief from the Women's Air Force could never have thought of. So yeah, it's exciting that every generation, it seems to get better.
All this time, our presidents, assume, the responsibility, and then they, their spouses are considered the first lady. I think it would be really incredible, just like you said, is when, we have had a female run for president, but when a female actually serves as president. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's exciting, because I think that's going to be in our lifetime. And you never know, it could be your daughter, but yeah, the sky's the limit.
Speaking as a man, if the question is ever posted, have we made progress in women's equality? Have we finally gotten to where we need to be? It's not up to men to answer that. Only you all can decide that. Yeah, that is not on us. Granted, my opinion, the first female Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, that's amazing progress, but it's not the progress. Eventually, her gender should no longer be a broadcast news point.
It shouldn't be, right, something of topic anymore. It should be just a natural fit.
Yeah, it should be of such little value that it's not even mentioned.
Right.
Yeah. But it's up to you to decide if we made progress, not me.
Yeah. And one of the things too, I was just thinking, listening to you guys, is I think, 100 years ago when this movement was going on, you know, they didn't look at, it was a barrier, right? Women's equality, there was a barrier. But I think moving forward, the one thing I want to say to females or minority groups, the only barriers that are in place are the ones that we allow to be there, right? So it's up to us to break down whatever barriers are remaining, you know, and fight for those things that we want to happen. And that's one of the things, like I tell my girls all the time, you only can't if you believe you can't. But if you believe you can, then you absolutely can, and you should give it 100%. And I think, like you said, one day, maybe this isn't as big of a topic as it is now, but it's only because of the effort that we're putting in now and in the future. So, and
not just elections, but also the female perspective, even in the workplace. So, you know, without our influence, then it will continue to be a workplace that doesn't look at women in positional, in high-level positions, position of power, right? Because you know, you can be a strong female in the workplace, and you can be a strong female in your home and in general in society, right? But how can you maximize that that line of effort if you don't have the views of a woman being investigated, looked at, made better? And I think, you know, if I could put an example on it, it would be, you know, nursing moms. You know, we want to be able to, you know, be moms. Some of us aspire to be moms, and so how do we go ahead and make that work with having a job? And the workplace, up until I think 2012, I think is when we started really seeing the movement of having nursing stations in the workplace. Because when I was coming through, I had to have that uncomfortable conversation about that, you know, and not all men can see from that perspective. So, so I think that's where we make the difference and make sure that we are talking about those issues that affect us.
There's, especially for men, gender dynamics isn't a zero-sum game. Someone doesn't have to lose just so someone can win. If a man is very, you know, assured and confident in his masculinity, he welcomes a strong female. I mean, it's a natural partner in just power dynamics. Gender has nothing to do with it. Yeah, there's, yeah, it is definitely not zero-sum.
At home with my kids, that's what we strive to do, my husband and I, is that 50-50 role. We start them young on knowing that not just the girls do, you know, the housework, that it's a 50-50 game, and our kids see us as hardworking. I'm a hardworking mom, you got a hardworking dad. I think that's important to be that example to our children and at home. It starts at home, right? But also it bleeds over, how we are at home bleeds over to our airmen, as you would say, to be strong role models and to be that support, but also to be made sure that that the work is fair shared across, no matter what the gender is. It shouldn't matter.
And I'll say, as I have in the U.S. a traditional girl's name, I've been hired to be commander's execs, and then I show up. They think at the time they thought they were hiring a female. And I show up, and I was instantly dismissed because there were certain roles that were traditionally just for female airmen. Right. They said, "Oh, we were expecting someone else." And I got sent right back to the office. So, yeah, but that's gotten better. We've seen definitely a reduction in roles that were traditionally for one gender or another. Right. Female battlefield airmen. Eventually, we're going to get one. Right. Yeah, they are very close to making it. The first female Green Beret, the first female Rangers. Yeah. We're going to get there, yeah, eventually. It's no longer just secretaries and executive assistants. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and that's part of me. I guess maybe this, like, the vulnerable piece of it is, you know, if I can be a little vulnerable for a minute, but, you know, we talk about women's equality and how we're able to do all these things. I think it sometimes, and I don't know if you two have the same experience, it sometimes puts a little bit of a burden that I can, right? Because I have always been a pretty hard-charging airman. I've always known what I want. I've always gone after it. But sometimes it's a give and take at home, right? So you have that balance. I still want to be a mom, and I still want to be doing these things, and I think sometimes females are our own worst enemies because we think we have to do everything, right? So because I'm able to do these things in the workplace and, you know, in the Air Force and be a senior master sergeant, but then I try to be the best mom, and I try to be involved, and I want to coach, you know, the running clubs downtown, and be that whole well-rounded person. But I feel like I sometimes, you know, we put that burden on us because I feel like I have to almost overachieve just to prove that I can do all these things, right? And I don't know, Sergeant Ochoa, do you feel like you have those same burdens?
No, but I recognize that you do. So I cannot sympathize, but I can empathize. I'll never know what a female goes through, but I mean, I at least recognize it. It's this demand to be the wife and the mother and to the traditional role, but to also do really what your heart drew you to serve in the U.S. Air Force. It's absolutely not fair. Yeah, absolutely not. The things that you have to think about and the things that you have to go through, we don't. And the conversations you have to have with your daughters, I don't have to have with my son. It is not fair. And I mean, as a mature man, I absolutely recognize that. And all I can do is empathize and at least do my best when it comes to the people that I lead and saying, hey, we're going to try to let you have both worlds. Yeah, basically. I'll never have to struggle with that. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. We've never had to contest between home and career. I'm sorry, but believe me, I absolutely recognize it, and I absolutely feel for women who feel that they have to choose.
I think that's one of the biggest questions I get being a female senior enlisted leader is how you balance family and your work, your career, because as Senior Garcia pointed out, as a female, you want to make sure that you're covering all that. You have your responsibilities, your strong commitment to your family and to making sure your children are taken care of, but you have a responsibility to your airmen as well. So who gets more time? So it's a constant tug.
Along those lines also, you know, some of the, maybe it comes a little bit more naturally, but I know there are times when I have to question, you know, am I being too sensitive? Am I being over-nurturing? You know, because as military, that's usually not in the same sentence. But because as senior enlisted leaders, we take care of our airmen, but perhaps as women, we take care of it a little bit different. And so sometimes it's like you mentioned, we can be our biggest hindrance, perhaps, because I tend to overanalyze my actions and how they are seen as, are they seen as weaknesses, or is it okay to be vulnerable? So that in and of itself can be challenging when you're trying to be that leader in the organization.
Any other remarks? I think we're good, huh? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, the Wing Staff Agency Superintendents wanted to collaborate on this effort to get different perspectives. And that's all we have for today. Thank you.